Hi, I'm Puls, owner of Puls Marine Surveying, and I'm a master marine surveyor. I serve the Mid-Columbia region of Washington State. I live in Kennewick, Washington. And what I do is I am a surveyor for boats and yachts. Now, what is a surveyor for boats and yachts? Well, if you've ever bought a house, you had it inspected. And the inspector gave you a written report detailing what was right, what was wrong, what needed to repair. That's what I do with small commercial craft and small yachts and larger yachts. And so what's my experience? Why do I do this? Well, I was brought up on boats. I love boats. I love being on the water. I'm absolutely happiest when I'm out on the water, and that's been true for my entire life. I grew up in West Michigan, and so we were only about 20 miles from Lake Michigan. Now, if you've never seen Lake Michigan, it's basically the same as an ocean, but without any tides. I grew up on boats. My family had boats. I learned to run them at a very early age. But I also had an uncle who had quite a bit of money, and he liked yachts, and he wanted to have the biggest yacht on the lake. Well, that started off with a 42-foot solid mahogany Chris Craft. It was a beautiful boat. It was a work of art. He then sold that and bought a 50-foot Chris Craft flush deck. Kept that for a few years, and that's the first one he taught me to run. And by that I mean I still remember the first time I got behind the wheel up on the bridge. We were all over the place. Because like most people, first time on a larger boat, I overcorrected constantly. But he taught me how to do things. He then bought a 66-foot Chris Craft Constellation. It was custom built. And he taught me again not just how to run it, but how to maintain all of the systems. Now, this was a twin diesel boat, and it had all the systems that modern yachts have, except it did not have air conditioning. His next yacht was a 76-foot Trumpy motor yacht, and he taught me how to run that one as well. As a matter of fact, he loaned it to my wife and me when we got married for a trip around Lake Michigan, just the two of us. So I've been around boats my whole life. In recent years, I've had the pleasure of being captain of a number of yachts ranging from 45 feet to 57 feet. I've traveled up and down through the San Juan Islands, the Gulf Islands in Canada, and so on. But more than that, I'm interested in what boats are made of, how they are constructed, how they work. Because there are so many different systems can go wrong. Case in point, I almost lost a boat about 16 years ago. It was a smaller yacht, about 36 feet. And I had my 80-year-old aunt and uncle from California. We were out on a sunset cruise. It was a beautiful day. And as we're coming back towards the marina, I suddenly had a freewheeling engine. And I thought I'd lost a prop shaft. Well, I opened up the engine compartment, and no, there was water flooding in. I thought I'd lost a propeller. I opened the compartment, and there's water flooding in. I'd lost the prop shaft. What had happened, well, I'll get to that in a second. I made it back to the main dock at fairly high speed. I got down in there, water's getting deep, and what I always carry shaped wooden plugs on board. Had my wife grab me one as big as wrench she could find, because I didn't have room for a hammer, and pounded that home into the receiver where the shaft should be. That slowed it down from 60 gallons a minute to about 12 gallons an hour. And we did not sink, obviously, which is a good thing. What that taught me was a prop shaft out of alignment can result in catastrophic failure. About 3 weeks before, I had hit a deadhead. I couldn't tell where, and I checked for vibration, I checked for leaks, and so on. Saw nothing, no vibration, but it had apparently hit right on the strut, and it bent the strut on the prop shaft about 1.5 inches out of true, which meant that every time the prop shaft went around, it was flexing. Metal fatigue finally kicked in, it broke, and water pressure pulled it back out of the boat. Fortunately, I had a protective zinc on the shaft itself, and that stopped it about 1 inch short of the rudder. Had it taken out the rudder, I'm not sure as I could have kept her afloat. That induced a real paranoia in me. It was made a little bit worse a few years later with a different boat when I had an engine overheat. I looked down in there, and there's water coming in all over the place. A cooling water hose had come off the intake. It was an easy replacement, an easy repair, but if you run an engine when it's overheating, you're going to fry the engine. So I've decided to take my experience, my training. By training, I mean I'm a certified master marine surveyor. I'm a member of the United States Surveyors Association and the American Boat and Yacht Council, and turn it into something that people can benefit from. So what do I do? What does a surveyor do? Well, whether you're buying, selling, you want a survey, or your insurance company may require a survey, as somebody just informed me yesterday. They want me to survey their boat because their insurance company wants a fresh survey. What I do then is I inspect everything on the boat. I'm going to look first at hull integrity. If the boat's out of the water, and I hope that it is, I'm going to check for osmotic blisters, which means water's gotten under the paint and is literally dissolving the hull. That's an easy repair, however. I'm going to look for delamination, which means the hull's coming apart. I'm going to look for damage to the hull itself. I'm going to check the prop shafts for are they true or are they bent. I'm going to check the rudders. I'm going to check the gimbal bearings, all of that. I'm then going to percussion test the entire hull. And what that does is by sound, I can tell whether or not there's a problem with a specific part of the hull. Okay? Then I'm going to check the decks for moisture intrusion. The older the boat, the more likely it is there's moisture intrusion. And it comes in from the bedding of the rails and the cleats. The older the boat gets, the more likely there is going to be intrusion, and the question is not is there, but how much. There's some on my own boat here. I use that using a very special instrument that can detect moisture through 1.5 inches of solid concrete. I'm telling you the truth on that. So we're going to know what's going on. I'm going to check all of the decks. I recently checked a sailboat, and the only intrusion was around the mast, and it wasn't severe, so no problem. I'm going to check for soft spots. That means that there's rot going on underneath, which means the deck needs to be torn out and replaced. It's an expensive proposition. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to tear up the floorboards. I'm going to go down in the bilge. I'm going to check everything. I'm going to check for water. I'm going to check for signs of water intrusion, which means, has this boat been sunk before? Case in point, a friend of mine bought a boat. Oh, it was beautiful. It really was beautiful. It's all polished up and nice. He asked the seller, has this boat ever been had water inside? Oh, no. Well, guess what, folks? They lie. Sellers lie. And so he bought it, and he brought it over here, launched it, got about 100 yards downriver, and I got a phone call and says, hey, come get me quick, we're sinking. He described it as there was a kerthunk sound in the back. The engine started sounding funny, it quit, and then there was water coming in. Well, what had happened was even though the boat was beautiful on the top, I tore up the carpet and it was rotten underneath. The stringers, which are the sections that hold the engine up, even though they're clad in fiberglass, were absolutely rotten. Or in another case, a young man wanted me to check a sailboat that he was just in love with. It was up on land, very good, fresh paint, very nice, except my knife blade went right through the hull in about a half a dozen places. It was rotten. It needed to be replaced. So that's why I check those things. I'm checking for bilge pumps. Do they work? I'm checking for leaky engines. Checking for signs of corrosion. It's especially true on saltwater boats. Now, I'm on my own boat right now, as you can tell. It's in the middle of February, so we're in winter layup. But this is a saltwater boat. And saltwater boats tend to have corrosion. That's not the question. The question is, how severe is it? Is it bad enough that things need to be replaced? I'm going to check electrical connections. They are really, really important. Too often we try to do our own wiring, and we like to do it the same way we do at home. And we use these little screw-on caps or little wing nuts. That is a real hazard, fire hazard on a boat. Because those caps come loose because of vibration. And when they come loose, they can arc. They can start a fire. I've seen boats burn to the waterline because of that. You don't want that to happen. So I'm going to check the wiring. I'm going to check the batteries. Is everything hooked up correctly? Does it meet Coast Guard standards? If the boat's over 26 feet, does it have a mounted automatic fire suppression system by the engines? I'm going to check the galley. I'm going to check all the tanks. Are the fuel tanks, are they welded aluminum? Are they steel? Or are they fiberglass? If they're fiberglass, have they had ethanol gasoline in them? If they've had ethanol gasoline in them, ethanol will dissolve fiberglass. So what happens is ethanol gets into the fuel gets into the engine, and the engine gets all gummed up and won't run. Very expensive. I'm going to check the freshwater tank. I'm going to check the holding tank from the sanitation system. I'm going to check through hulls. Where is the water coming in? Are they solid? Are they corroded? Are the hoses in good condition? Up on deck, I'm going to check the alarms on the engines, the ignitions. Do they work? If it has a horn, does it work? Boats are required to have some means of creating sound. Let's see if mine works. Yes, it does. Good. It better. So I already know what I've got to do here for spring and so on. But what I do then is I give you a very detailed written report, and as well as several pages of pictures detailing what it is I found. Color pictures. I use a good high quality Nikon camera. All of this is 17 to 23, 24 pages. And it's good enough that your insurance company will say, yeah, okay, this is worth it. I also establish valuation. How much is this boat really worth? Recently had one, the owner was in Port Townsend, and he was buying a boat here, and I surveyed it, and turned out he'd already bought it, so he was a little late, and he paid a little bit too much for it, but by then it was too late. So I'm going to tell you what the boat's actually worth. Because quite often, like I said, we buy with our eyes. I've done it. Pretty much every boater has. We look at it and say, wow, I like that boat. I want it. I want it. My job is to tell you what's right and what's wrong with it. How much does it cost? Depends on the size of the boat and the year, how old it is. I mean, a 20-year-old cruiser is going to take longer than a 3-year-old cruiser. But I generally charge by the foot. You can see all of that on my website, which is pulsemarinesurveying.com. Okay, so that's what I do. I think the next video, what I'm going to do is I will show you some of the instruments and techniques that we use that any good marine surveyor is going to use to establish what exactly is going on with the boat that you are buying or selling. Okay? So have a great day.